Okay, now from looking back at our preliminary task, I think that we vastly improved our filming skills as well as our editing skills. Um, where should I start from? So, within our filming skills, if you look back at our preliminary, sometimes the lighting that we used was not always appropriate. I think if you look at the last scene in the preliminary, you can see that not even the last scene, the last few scenes, you can see that you can't really see the characters or the expressions on their face, so you don't really have an understanding for what's going on, and it's kind of confusing at the end. And that's one thing that our teachers critiqued us on, is that sometimes we need to be careful with the lighting that we're using, because obviously as we're creating the piece, we know in our current thriller piece, basically it's just each shot has been cut and then just put in, and that's pretty much it for the preliminary. There was no visual effects or nothing external that we put in. Everything that was in our thriller, in our preliminary, sorry, was everything that we filmed, excluding the credits at the end. Well, the typography, and the typography wasn't we didn't make that separately. That was just something that we just added to the end. However, in our thriller, that's completely different, as I'm gonna mention later on in this video. I would also like to say, when it came to our use of shots, we feel that we used a wider variety of shots in our thriller piece than in our preliminary piece. Another thing that our teacher critiqued us on is that we were very limited regarding our shots in our preliminary, and sometimes the message that we were trying to convey was not very well put across. However, she did say we did use some good shots, such as when one of the characters is walking down the stairs, and when also one of the characters is running across the front of the camera. But from the response that we've had from other people, they're very impressed with the types of shots that we did use in our thriller opening, our latest one. And we decided to create that separately. We wanted to make it look as professional as we could, and in order to do this, we used Adobe After Effects with the main editor Caspar, putting together our typography. And as he was in control of that, he was fully in control of that. He was fully involved within the editing process more than I was. I was more involved with the directing. But if you compare the way that if you compare that typography with the one in our preliminary, it is much better. It has different moving frames and videos of the kind of image we were trying to put across to our audience, which was like terror attacks and building up suspension and violence, and those were all in the frames within the typography. And I think even though it was at the end, it helped us to convey what we wanted to convey within the thriller. Came to the amount of people within our preliminary, I think we only had 2 actors. However, in our thriller, we had around 4 actors this time: Rakeem, Saeed, me as a mystery detective, and Ahmed. And this helped us to involve more social groups, and represent a wider range of people, whilst in our thriller there was only two characters and it was very limited in its dynamics, and it it didn't really expand any ideas, as it was just the same two characters, and once you got an insight to the characters, that was pretty much it. And we found that that wasn't as intriguing and entertaining. Although there are many differences between our preliminary and thriller, that that choices that we made in order to improve it, I believe that in our preliminary our choice of music was good, as the same was with our thriller London's Burning, as both pieces of music were slowly rising within tension, and we believed that although throughout all the mistakes in our preliminary, the music kind of not made up for it, but it almost aided the fact that there were so many mistakes, and still managed to put in some form of tension into the preliminary. But our choice of music, which came from the Batman soundtrack, in our thriller, we believe it was the best choice, because throughout the song, the use of strings and also the slow tempo, which was continuously rising, also with the slowly rising dynamics, added to the tension, as whenever the dynamics would rise, we would find that something or a revelation would happen within our thriller, and this only added to the dynamics overall of our thriller London's Burning. I believe that in the progression from our preliminary to our thriller piece, we have learnt that we can't just go into trying to film something and not have a set arrangement for the type of shots we're going to take, because it just leads in almost confusion, because although you may give a slight hint into what you're doing, you may not be able to fully convey what you're doing, especially for us, as we're quite inexperienced with what we're doing, and it may come off as just random shots here and there. As regarding the progression over from the preliminary to the full task, we have also learnt that regarding music, you must be careful with the type of music that you do choose. Yeah. As a summary, I believe that as a whole, as a group, we've learned that our skills regarding editing and have improved since our preliminary, as I mentioned before, as when we were editing using Windows Live Movie Maker, as you can see from our thriller and our preliminary, there was no real transitions between frames or anything that we have now. However, when we did edit using Adobe After Effects, we used an effect almost as if it was a flashback. So between frames, you could see that everything that happened before the interview scene was just recollections from Rakeem's memory and just flashbacks, and that also helped to build up to the final scene, and we believe that this aided us, and we learnt our lesson from trying to edit with Windows Movie Maker, which is very limited within its provisions.